Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again today for another episode of our monthly series dedicated to Saint-Gobain and the Olympic and Paralympic Games. I'd like to say hello to you here in the room, but also to everybody that's behind their screens, and let you know that this event will be subtitled in English, and so welcome to everyone, wherever you are around the world. There'll be a Q&A session at the end of the conference. So for those of you following from your screens or in this room, it's very simple. You can scan the QR code even, which will appear on the screen right now and will be present throughout the talk. Let's get into the heart of the matter. Move more, live better. Sport, health, and individual performance. It's a fairly general theme, and we'll look at this in more detail with Dr François Duforez and Claire Pedini. Hello, both of you. So, François, tell us, you're a specialist doctor in sport and sleep with a background in aeronautics, a former doctor at Paris Clinics, working at the sleep and care unit of the Hôtel Dieu, dealing with different disorders for the general public, including sports people. Let me also point out that you're a former sportsman yourself, a high level, and since then you've been supporting and continue to support sportsmen and women in motor racing, Alain Prost, ocean racing, Charles Caudrelier, soccer, rugby, the French rugby team, and Olympic athletes. Have I said everything? Well, more or less, yeah. Practically. What else could I add? No. The Olympic Games in Paris is extremely important, and we see that in the different demands that are put on us. It's really this notion of recovery, which is part of performance. So it's across the board. Handball's asked us for this. Basketball, I say we because there's a team with me, of course. Recovering becomes an element of performance. What's incredible is that you impact all different sectors. Tell us a little bit more. Sport, sailing, top-level sailing, what's that like? Well, I always say thank you to the people who've trained me, notably in the army, because as a doctor, as a military doctor for 5 years, it wasn't just caring for people, it was finding practical solutions for issues such as, I remember with our friend in the Claudia Enyai, who said, I can't sleep in a spacecraft. So the question was, what can we do for her? Give her pills? No, that's not the problem. The problem was there was no bed in the spacecraft because the environment was such that you haven't got a bed to sleep down. It's not so easy. And day and night, every hour and a half, the human being needs darkness to sleep well and light to be aware. And so the solution was not a pill, but to put the windows covered, rather to cover the windows to have a little bit of obscurity so the astronaut could sleep while the teams were in Houston. So putting curtains on the windows, just that, okay. Sometimes common sense is great. And then in the space shuttle, you know, there are several people. There's an organization as well, and with a mask that can float in the air. So that was for aerospace, the sport. Charles Caudrelier. Well, Charles is another story. This was the beginning with Charles now, who's in Arkea Ultimate Challenge, which is about being on a boat on your own, 30 meters long boat, and all around the challenge you can imagine. The practical point was to create an environment that was secure, one of performance. So he's lying on a bed where he can sleep on average between 10 and 40 minutes for days and days. So the notion of recovery is there and is also linked to safety. So that's really what we do with Charles. And this helps him make the right decisions. The right decisions, for example, for those who like sailing, is to know, I'm not going to go by Cape Horn. It's too dangerous. There's a massive depression there. So I will wait to pass under the best conditions. So you have to be clear in your head, clear in your body, and say, OK, I'm going to go for it without taking too much risk. And there's also Formula One, Grand Prix. Formula One, well, It's a few years ago now. I mean, Alan Prost is a little bit older now, but we haven't forgotten, of course. Oh, champion of the world, of course. World champion. And this is very connected to different time zones. Without giving any secrets away, he liked to get up at a particular moment, his precise time. Somebody who's very active in the morning. And the issue was when he was in Japan, for example, he didn't feel good. He would say, I really need to have a program which enables me with certain types of rituals and practices to be as vigilant as possible at the right moment. And the intelligence of this driver is to say, I'm not alone. There's 21 people around me that change the wheels, that change the tires, put in petrol, etc. So I need to deal with the whole team. And that's where his approach at a high-level sport, in the military world, there are people working at night. In the world of a company as well, this is also things that we apply to people working on shifts. Everybody is really tired in companies. Well, I'm not really saying really exhausted. Of course, I'm also a doctor in a hospital, and then people say, I have sleep disorders, that's why I'm tired. It's the word tiredness which is used. I'm tired and I have problems with fatigue during the day. I feel suddenly, wasted. Is it linked to lack of sleep, a significant increase in mental work, for example? That can explain. I'm really tired. On your side, Claire, you're the Senior Vice President in charge of human resources and corporate social responsibility. Wellness at work is really important for you, right? Well, it's at the foundation of performance, of course. It's the basis of living together. It's looking for a collective performance. Well, everybody has to feel as best as possible, because when we're feeling good, we're happy to be at work, we're happy in our lives, which is most important, of course. Healthy to be at work, happy to be at work, happy to perform together. So it's a virtuous circle, in fact. So it's really the basis of what we should be able to offer to our employees in the company. Today, Saint-Gobain cares for its employees. There is this chain of value and value chain even within the group. Could you say a little bit about the group and the specific French program? Sure, before these programs, of course, we have now for a number of years worked on health. Historically, Saint-Gobain's values were solid when it came to safety. We have fantastic results, taking care of people in hazardous areas where safety of employees is really important. I've really wanted to work on the health side on top of safety. So we now have a health policy which applies not just to employees, but to anybody acting in our companies, subcontractors, the value chain, and also with our products and the neighbors to our plants as well. What we've introduced more recently is well-being, wellness, and we have a few illustrations of this global program, which is called CARE, where you can see the logo, which is really about health, more physical health, giving all of our employees, wherever they are around the world, Thailand, and Mexico, Germany, and the US, medical coverage, general practitioner hospitalization cover up to 80%, which seems obvious to us in France, but there are many countries where it wasn't in place. Also, with parenthood support, 14 weeks minimum maternity leave, that seems obvious in France, but there are many other countries around the world where this was extraordinary to say, I'm going to be paid for 14 weeks to welcome this child. And also, of course, the parent leave for the father, not just maternity as well. And then there are events which are sadder in life when so there is a death in a family. There is 1 year of pay entitled to the deceased employee's family. And then there are examples in each country. Each country has actually embarked on taking upon itself health programs, emotional health, physical health. And the program in France is called I Take Care of Myself. We've got a lovely illustration around musculoskeletal disorders, psychosocial illnesses, which we've worked a really lot on in France. And this is also important for a group like Saint-Gobain, where you have high demands in terms of results, notably this year. So caring and benevolence, all of these programs are extremely important, right? Caring, performance and demands, they go together. They fuel each other. It's not because we're demanding that we should be caring. It's not because the two go together. And once again, wellness, feeling good, being able to welcome and being welcomed pushes us to go for performance, to go for that extra mile. So I really insist on this virtuous circle. Saint-Gobain is a caring and welcoming home. It's a welcoming and caring home, depending on the circumstances as well. Because we need to aim higher. We're in a year of performance, Olympic year. Saint-Gobain has to prove even more and demonstrate that the performance of our businesses improve year on year. So yes, we need to be caring and we need to be vigilant. Whether it's at work, outside of work, we can be facing stress and pain. Doctor, concretely, basically, what can we do? What sort of key gestures? Well, let's say moving, first of all. If you're sitting down, maybe I'll get you to stand up in a moment, because your vigilance will come down after a moment. And after lunch is not good either. Siesta would be necessary, a little power nap. But just going back to what Claire was saying, because I think there are two key words which appear: pleasure and efficiency. We ask for efficiency, but if the key movements are to move and to walk, everybody knows that. Everybody knows you need to move more. Notably with COVID, where we ended up in front of our screens for hours and hours. Why don't people do it? Because is it a health obligation? Not always. It's not always what motivates people to do this. What's interesting is, for example, to walk for 10 minutes under the sun. With March and April, we know that's coming. We know we are efficient scientifically with our biological clock putting back into place, and then it becomes a bit of a ritual. All the rituals linked to movement, action, where we move, these are the things that everybody can take ownership of and reproduce. That was the question with COVID. With COVID, we lost those rituals. We ended up isolated experimentally with a first confinement, a first lockdown that went okay because the weather was good. I'm not speaking about the students, unfortunately. They were in 20 square meters studios, and we see the consequences in the hospital. But it was nice. But the second lockdown in November, there you had questions of weather. You had the issue of the distance, the light coming down, and all the processes that things weren't always going very well. So the environment is very important. You spoke about putting this into practice, and that makes me think you said everyone should stand up. Let's do it. Early, come on then. Let's stand up, everybody. Let's go. So if I may, one of the issues that we have when we are in front of our screens, like most of us, is that we don't move enough. So I'm going to get you all to stand up. I was told I wasn't allowed to lose anybody here, so this won't be too difficult. And when you sit down, you'll feel like you're on a rocking chair. It's quite practical. One of the issues we have is that we're in front of our screens. There's an explosion of musculoskeletal disorders. So you are your own osteo. Let me show you a few reflexes connected to the muscles in your neck. We're going to do this all together and in the same direction. You'll understand why. So I'll do this in front of you without moving my shoulders. I'm going to move my head to the left. Just look at me for the moment. I can see perhaps something blue over there. I don't know what it is. I come back here without moving my head. I take my finger. As I move to a left, I'm going to look as far as possible, only with my eyes. Do it 4 or 5 times, and then I take the same posture, and I look, and I can see the screen, which is displayed behind me. I gain between 15 and 17 degrees. It works with me. Will it work with you? So let's try it. So we're all going to look to the right. Okay? So two looks to the right, take some kind of visual mark, come back and see me. Now, that's why we do it all in the same direction. We're going to go 5 times without moving your head. 3, 4, 5. Come back in the same posture. Move your head. Does it go further? Yeah, just a little bit. Tell me yes, otherwise it's a bad demonstration. No. So we have our hands in front, behind. It doesn't matter. The important, I put them in front, but behind is not to move. In fact, not to have the shoulders which move. So we did it to one side. We maybe do it to the other side so that you're symmetrical. And perhaps you're going to realize that it's easier or more spectacular or less on the other side. It means that we are lateralized. So let's do this to the left. Go over here. Okay, I come back here. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I look, and things are much better. As I'm a doctor, let me tell you what's going on here. This is called the oculocerebral reflex. It's part of the way we work and we develop. The danger 100 generations ago was to look behind. And for fighter pilots, it's extremely important, especially when we're in 3D, to know what's going on in the 3 dimensions. And for us, now for about a few decades, we've been blocked in front of our screens. We're not obliged in the middle of a meeting to do this with our fingers in the air. The important thing is to move your eyes. Just moving your body is one thing, but moving your eyes is, because we know that when we're dreaming, when we're sleeping, we call this REM sleep, rapid eye movement. It's fundamental to rebalancing. You said we could do this with our eyes closed. That means we do the same thing, but with the eyes closed, and it works. But the eyes move within, but we don't see you doing it. That's the idea. But think about moving your eyes. It's something that's very interesting to avoid muscular tension. So thank you very much. Applause for that. I think it's very simple to do that, yeah. I think it's also possible to do micro power naps to regenerate, to be more alert. Can you explain how that works? After that, we're not going to do it, but it's based on, again, an experience linked to COVID, with all of the screens. And when we study and people who say they're exhausted at the end of the day, we give them connected watches and we look what happens. And we've seen, instead of having this famous drop in vigilance that comes at the end, this drop arrived every hour. Why? And in fact, it's people who were on their screens in a Zoom or Teams, and they were going from one video conference to another. Sometimes you didn't have time to go to the loo. It's without having the capacity to recover, to start up again. So this is what I learned in the army, for example. It's the first thing that I proposed because I used it 40 years later. It's a micro nap that lasts 1 to 2 minutes, not more, but which will enable you to reactivate your vigilance over a certain length of time. So this is called breathing, square root breathing, used in other themes. So you design a square in your head, breathing 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 seconds, breathing in for 4 seconds, and breathing for 4 seconds. So it lasts 16 seconds. At the end of these 16 seconds, I'll do it with you. We're going to breathe out for 5 seconds and then breathe in for 5 seconds. Why 5 and 5? Because it's the automatic breathing of sleeping. Sometimes it's called cardiac coherence. It's so easy afterwards. Okay? So it's 1:20, it's perfect. We've just had lunch, we feel good. So I close my eyes. I try to be as relaxed as possible. Imagine this square. I breathe for 4 seconds, the first side of the square. Stop. Second side of the square, I don't breathe. Third side, I breathe. I breathe out. Stop. Fourth side, I don't breathe. Eyes are still closed. Now that I've drawn my square, I imagine a point on a curve, for example, this point will come down, breathing gently for 5 seconds. And then I breathe out for 5 more seconds. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. At your own pace now. Gently we come back to the surface, move my feet, my legs, my toes, my fingers, put my arms above my head, taking a deep breath, and breathing out. I come back to the room and open my eyes. Wow, that feels great. Everybody's there? We haven't lost anybody? We've lost half of the room. You do that without realizing it, in fact. Often at the end of the day, people do it. And with stretching as well. It's something to organize, and that's about controlling your biological clock, your own. You decide to do it when it's the right time to do it. You know that it's productive. Claire, if we do that in the company, is these micro siestas, are they accepted and tolerated? Won't we have this effect, oh, this is a guy who's a waster, he's having a micro? That's the risk. It's recommended, I would say. So it's not even a question of is it accepted, or it's recommended. So what's not accepted is not to accept it. And it's good to say it. That's really important because once again, you said 10 times better than I could. I mean, with my own words, a company is there also to make sure that everybody feels good. And once again, when we feel good, that's where the performance comes. And recognition that everybody's different. Everybody has a different rhythm or pace. I'm not saying we have to completely strip down altogether. I'm saying we need to be together when we're there. But we need to also have this asynchronous approach so that we can, for each individual, each person to find this flexibility. For a number of years, you've heard me speak about diversity. We had gender diversity, nationality, training, background, education, beliefs that we push for in the group, but there's also the diversity of your own rhythm. And so what we try to promote is this capacity that we all need to have to express our own rhythm, once again, in a team that works. We're not saying that everybody does whatever they want, whenever they can. No, we need this recognition, this flexibility that each person should have in the company, of course. I would just add one thing here. If you like rugby, I think you like rugby. It's interesting to see what appears every time there's a try, whether it's the team that's scored or they do into a circle and they breathe together. All nationalities do this now. There is a reason for this. It's really something which is above, which is shared, which is individual, but which is shared collectively. And this sharing, but indeed you say both of you, everybody has their own biological clock and some instructions don't necessarily meet others. How do you find your own rhythm, Doctor? Well, first of all, by your own personal observation. Yawning is a very good example. When people start yawning, often you hide because, no, but yawning is taking vigilance again. It's a reflex, an archaic reflex. My advice is to say to note it down over 10 days. And you're going to see that you're going to be yawning practically almost at the same time every day. Mine's around 5 p.m. because it's also linked to our chronology. The sleep agenda is something that's very easy to do, a sleep diary. There is the Morphée network. You can go and find questionnaires. What kind of sleeper you are? There are two components. The first is, do you sleep short? People with 6 hours, that's great. Some need 9. In general, it's about 7.5. And there are people that are more morning or more evening. Generally, they're younger because it moves with age. And then there are intermediaries. So what sort of sleeper are you? This helps you to anticipate at what time you should get up, so I feel good, because the quality of waking up will determine the quality of the day. And when we've got no kids, it needs to be specified. Sure, we need to specify that as well. But the best sleeper is the best manager of their debt. Sailors are a great example. These are people that sleep very little, that make decisions all the time in a world that's moving constantly. And where there's a notion of safety, that's extremely important. And the best sleeper is the best manager of their debt. If you've got tools to pay your debt, you decided to pay it. So it means that even if we're a little bit tired, knowing that at this time we yawn a lot, that's when we say we have no meetings, we make no decisions, if it's possible. Then there are means of changing. But if you know that, this helps you to anticipate rather than to take hypovigilance in one go. When we're driving, it's obvious. Every 2 hours, things happen. Rhythms that last about 1.5 hours. So that's really energy, physical energy. There's also a psychological energy to be found. We might feel tired, but in our minds, and then I'm speaking about mental health here. What are the measures that Saint-Gobain have put in place for employees that might need help? Well, before speaking about initiatives, I think we should speak first of all about attitude. The first thing that we promote and push for is listening. When we're not feeling well, we need to be comfortable in the fact that we can speak about it, that we can speak out. And before saying because we have, of course, a hotline, training for managers, communication to make sure that it's really taken into consideration. But everybody needs to develop this capacity to listen, this capacity to realize perhaps somebody's tired, not doing too well. And also we need to show ourselves to be flexible. And experience tells me that this listening capacity, people perceive this when you speak yourself. So don't hesitate yourself to say, well, today I'm like this, or I'm like that, or today I'm a bit tired, or I need a break, because it's also setting the tone. When you speak, you facilitate the expression of the whole team and everybody we're working with. We're speaking about initiatives in Saint-Gobain. We've got a medical network in France and in other countries like Brazil, for example. A lot of networks to help employees. We've got 12 occupational doctors, 4 social workers, a lot of nurses who are there also to help you, to listen to you. So don't hesitate to call on them on this network, which is quite fantastic, with the human skill that's incredible. And once again, your colleagues, your HR, the unions, managers, we all need to be capable of listening and showing that we ourselves, we are transparent on these subjects. This shouldn't just be felt like a weakness. It's just life. It's normal. Doctor, what advice would you give to cope with these complicated situations, disputes, conflict, stress? I'm not a psychologist, but experience tells me, once again, sailing has shown us some amazing things. In sailing, if there's a problem, there are complications, disputes, maybe not with the people when we're on our own, but with the sea, bad luck. What's really interesting is to see, it's very unique, it speaks about resilience. When you're on your own, There are two types of sharing. They film when there's a problem. Where I've seen guys cry, I've seen guys shouting, giving expression to their emotions. To have somebody who's not going to judge them or measure them, but it's the camera that already accepts the fact that like this. The second thing they do is that they call their team, their crew, to say what's wrong. And that gives a certain distance. We're not alone. I think that's also a key point. You mustn't remain on your own. And one of the points, to go back to what you were saying, notably in teams, when we've got people who come to see you in the morning and say, how are you doing? Well, okay, no. Are you stressed? What do you mean? Why is he asking me this question about stress? Ask the question, did you sleep well? And that's incredible what people will tell you. Well, no, I didn't sleep so well because my daughter's sick, or there's plenty of things that happen when we speak, when we take care of ourselves, when we take care with others. And that's these little things. Winston Churchill would say, attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. But if you're not the best in terms of sport, alcohol, etc., he wasn't necessarily a champion there, but these little phrases, and we're dealing with behavior here. We're dealing with the work of your occupational doctors as well, because it's a pleasure also to see that it's through behavior that we can really solve a lot of problems. And communication. Another point is nutrition. This can be good for making good decisions, sleeping well. Any tips to share on nutrition? Well, there again, in the army, we noticed that if you don't feed the pilots who are flying over long distances, they get tired faster than the machines. So there's some simple things to be done. What we call chrononutrition. Breakfast is very important. To have proteins means you can provide neurotransmitters on vigilance. However, associating pleasure and efficiency to sleep well. Sugar, taken in an isolated way. You mentioned earlier about the dark chocolate. Yeah. I was saying this little dark chocolate. He's revealing my secrets here. This little, it's really important to do this. Taken about 45 minutes before. There isn't a scientific explanation as well, because tryptophan is an acid that increases and is transformed into ferritin, which is the hormone for sleeping. This is what sailors do as well. I take this example, it's very human. It's really important that I sleep fast because I need it. So it's jam made by their mother or their... However, it's 1 square of chocolate, right? Not 10. And there's another thing that works well, and I found that fantastic, which is coffee just before having a nap. Yeah, that comes from rugby. Well, not from rugby, but let's say some advice that I would give to the rugby men. I'm giving this between us. I know I'm linked to professional secrets, but it's often the forwards that give advice to the backs. The forwards, they listen. And this prop would say, have a drink of coffee and then have a siesta between 10 and 40 minutes. It's a bit longer than what I proposed earlier. Why would the hooker say this? Because coffee will go into your blood, depends on people, between 20 and 40 minutes, and it'll bring you out of your siesta to avoid what we call the inertia of sleeping, which is not very pleasant at all. You do a siesta that lasts 45 minutes, you're still more tired than when you started sleeping. Caffeine will bring you out of it more positively, and it's so easy to do. And I imagine for feeling good with nutrition, it's also to take time to eat at lunchtime with colleagues, to have a laugh. It seems obvious. It's an active management, I would say. I was in with Jordan, the stables in Ireland, and the manager said, we're a rock and roll team. We've got our yellow, green, and we're not like Williams there that's eating white bread. They're sad. They're sad. AQA in the sense of a driver's team, a racing team. I found this this Italian chef with specialized in pasta with lots of sauce and colors and pleasure associated. So I think that's really important in our Latin culture as well. Pleasure a day keeps the stress away. And through nutrition, it's really an important point. So colored dishes, we see this with the rugby, French rugby team. My wife's a nutritionist. If there's no pleasure there, they're going to eat up the nutritionist. There's nothing else to be done. So we need to bring dishes that are interesting and efficient, of course, when it comes to from a scientific base. And there's also an important notion to feel good, which is going into action. You mentioned rituals at the beginning of this talk, the little rituals in the morning, the aftershave or perfume that you choose. What can we say about that? Well, these rituals start in the bathroom. I think it's very interesting because there's a hot shower that increases the body temperature. It's necessary because during the night this temperature comes down physiologically. So a hot shower is also interesting. And then all the massages that we can have without realizing of stimulation. Washing and the different fragrances, because we know the biological clock is very sensitive. The elements of the brain behind the eyes, just close to the senses of smell, which all these personal fragrances that are pleasant reactivate vigilance and the pleasure of getting up. And on top of this, if you walk under the sun, it's a great way to start the day because the quality of the day depends on the quality of waking up. That's the key point. Claire, you have a tool for measuring employee satisfaction. It's called Me at Saint-Gobain. It's an annual barometer. What are the interesting figures with regard to the subjects we've just mentioned? We have one question which I think answers what we've just spoken about quite well, which is health and safety are important for my team and for the organization. And what is very satisfactory and satisfying is that 92% of employees agree with this, with more than 100,000 people that answered last year, with a participant rate of 87% last year. 92% of our employees agreed, yes, safety and health are a priority for everyone in my team. The goal is to be at 100%, of course, because this has to be a ritual. It's really something which should be in our day-to-day lives. Everyone in Saint-Gobain should be able to say health and safety is important, and we take that into consideration. And I hope with all of these talks and discussions, it shows how much importance we attach to this subject, to these two subjects of health and safety that go together. Once again, we've pushed a lot on health, notably with Geneviève Toucourt, who's our occupational director with health at group level, because it's the basis of feeling good, of wellness, of performance, of collective work, collaboration, and having desire. If I get up in the morning and I want to go and work in Saint-Gobain, then we've gone quite some way towards wellness and performance because, yeah, we mustn't forget that we're there also for performance too. We've got a job to do, we've got performance to improve, but quite frankly, as you were saying, it's the basis of our team to deal with this. It's about motivation as well, of course. It's motivation is moving. To the room now, perhaps, and those behind your screens, you can take part in this. Are there any questions? We'll take them with pleasure. The microphones are in the room. Anybody would like to ask a question, perhaps in the room? Behind your screens, you can do this with the Wissembly app. Just scan the QR code, and we'll answer some of your questions. Yes, please. Hello. Hi. A question concerning young mothers. I'm talking to Dr. Duforez in particular, who has great experience as a young mother. What particular advice? 6 times. Short question, short answer. What particular advice would you give to young mums going back to work and try to reconcile their life as a young mother for the first time in their life with going back to work? Was going back to the form that they had beforehand. Well, first of all, I'd say well done, because it's a big job. You know, we had a big problem in sailing with a sailor whose sponsor said, incredible. She found a boat and she's going to do the Vendée Globe, and that's great. So there's an issue in the sports world as well, exactly connected to what you're describing. I'm already thinking that the new generations are making more progress on this. Father is also present more and more. I think that's a good thing. Then there are more personal considerations, which when your son or daughter arrives, how to adapt to the rhythm, notably the first, when it's your first child, there is a learning phase. To know whether we breastfeed or not. There are individual cases which impact this change in lifestyle, and I think it's important that the father's involved too. And then there's a real consideration about, in France, we're lucky to have maternity leave, which isn't the case in all countries, that's true. And then it's about taking consideration of the physical side, the mental side. We should avoid the burnout, the post-birth stress and pressure. I think society in general accepts that more and thinks so much better after about 3 years. Well, then there's the second which arrives, and then the third. And now, if I may say, just to complete, there again, we mustn't hesitate to share. When we come back to work with a young child, the professional life's not the same. And we mustn't hesitate to say, I've had this in my own case 3 times, and it's very difficult. I'm not saying I didn't, it was fantastic for me. I'm going to go pick up my kid, or I can't be there before such a time because I'm dropping off at the nursery. Or there again, we mustn't hesitate to share. And don't doubt the benevolence of the group. I dare to ask for some things, and when I asked, it was, yeah, of course. So there again, let's rely a little bit and be supported by the group and the collective spirit. Another question. The rituals and tools that help us to manage pressure. In a few seconds, because we're going to ask a few questions. Well, I have at least 2, which is singing and tennis. Singing. I like opera. I won't ask you to listen to me singing opera. I'm sure I'm not at any high level. Under the shower, perhaps, yeah, or in the car, driving to work. There again, it's a physical gesture. We expel and sing in German. It's good. And if I don't have that a couple of times a week, well, not good. Physical activity, for sure. For several reasons. For physical reasons as well, because we expel the muscular tension and pressure. That's a good thing. Then, this activity varies according to age as well, because tennis, if you've got no problems for the moment, that's great. But isn't there any particular movement that calms us down immediately? That would be fantastic. There isn't anything, no. However, I might show you one quick exercise which requires, that will re-energize people. So, allez, let's go. Everybody, stand up again. We're all right, we're on time. So, this notion of perception and balance. Everybody says, well, I have a problem between my personal balance, family balance, working balance. But the word balance, it's Tony Estanguet who says it. It's this capacity to be isolated, to feel things positively. So stand up, military stance, garde à vue. I'm standing because my eyes are taking in millionths of a second things that are going on. What I'm going to ask you is to close your eyes. When you close your eyes, the situation is already different. We start moving and swaying a little bit because there are other senses that take over from the eyes that are closed. When I open my eyes, the sensation disappears. Now, for a few seconds, focus on where are these senses that enable me to stay standing straight. I can feel my feet, contact with the ground, moving constantly, and we feel the sensors with our toes. We feel our heels moving up to our ankles. Behind we got our thighs, that are muscles for staying in position. I need to be careful. Oh, situations. I need to really tighten my backside. That's reality. And then my back, the hips, the shoulders. All this information comes to my internal ear that stabilizes the balance. We memorize the situation, the sensation. I open my eyes. I'm going to now change position. We've got this in tennis as well, and football, and in martial arts. I slightly open my legs, bend my knees. When I close my eyes, do I move? No. In fact, a little bit. How? Back and forth, back and forth. We open our eyes. For the minute spent with you looking for balance, you were inside yourselves. I hope you forgot your phones, your emails, that you'll be looking maybe when you go out the room. And if I give you some advice, is that when we lack energy, when your mobile lacks energy, the first thing you do is somewhere to reload it. Do the same thing for yourselves. That's really the least you can do. And maybe, Doctor, because indeed we all forgot for about 10 seconds because we were surprised by the exercise. And when we know this exercise, does it still work? One, there's a scientific label, so you can go for it. It works. And this is what we were saying. It's not because we don't move that we're not productive. Or it's not because we move that we are not productive either. I mean, it's in this notion of pleasure, personal pleasure. I think there's one point which is key, which is the elbow room. People that are sensitive to stressful environments have no room to maneuver, notably in the military world. If you've got this freedom, that's the key. 10 seconds, this minute, it's for you. Use it for your own personal benefit, but also for the collective. The last question from the room. Afterwards, of course, you'll still hang on for any other questions. Yeah. Have you got any rituals that enable you to disconnect quickly and then to reconnect quickly? Well, at Hôtel Dieu, hospital in Paris, we have workshops. In your question, there is an issue, a current issue, which is 60–70% of French people wake up in the middle of the night, and it's not so much they wake up, it's the fact that they can't get back to sleep again because they don't manage to disconnect from thoughts, parasite thoughts. Then there's a multiplicity of techniques. The most interesting are those that work with no side effects. So this could be breathing, and you've got lots of tutorials now which exist either on cardiac coherence, sophrology. There are people that can't bear this. I need, rather than playing tennis or running or hitting, I've got too much energy. So there are people where it could be a physical activity, and this is the message I would pass on. Physical activity is medicine. It's moving. It's extremely important. For example, doctors say sometimes we shouldn't do sport in the evening. It's true if you're a professional footballer or a professional rugbyman, and you're not going to sleep before 3 in the morning because there's a match in a stadium and the emotions, etc. And lots of light. But I'm thinking about the first question. If you've got your job, your family life, which is there, which is a real challenge, you've got 1 hour where socially you're going to be able to go into a gym or learn things which are based on breathing, on stretching, Pilates, yoga. You've got to do it. That's not going to prevent you from sleeping. On the contrary, all these means of disconnection, reconnection are very individual, based on breathing, based on muscular tension, and at a further stage, a mental mindset. And this question asked online. In our branches, we are face-to-face with our customers, and that can provoke more and more stress. How can we be supported? Maybe it's an organizational question. Yeah, it's a very good question, which was reported up from the trade unions. It's a subject that this year I take care of myself. We've been working on this in the program to really equip people who are confronted sometimes with a sort of aggressiveness to manage this, to decompress, to be capable of showing care while serving the customer, who is very demanding. We're working on this in the program because it's really a subject which, unfortunately, in today's society, this form of violence and aggressiveness is coming back. So we're dealing with it this year. It's a very good point. Well, thanks for all of your questions. Thanks for your participation. It was a real pleasure, François and Claire. Thanks to you, and look forward for new adventures soon. Thanks very much.